May I request Mr. Girendra Bihari, Country Director, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Dr. Arvind Lal, Chairman and Managing Director, Dr. Lal Path Labs and Treasurer, Nat Health. Ms. Sangeeta Reddy, Joint Managing Director, Apollo Hospitals Enterprises Limited. Dr. G.S.K. Velu, Founder and Managing Director, Trivitron Group of Companies. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the esteemed panelists with a huge round of applause.
That anything would potentially come down from today's level of 58% to about 30%, some of the similar levels we're seeing in China. Suffer from malnutrition. And we're working with Kailash Satyarthi, and his term is, this is violence against children. So we need a policy of no child left behind. IIT, Girendra Gates Foundation, Dr. Lal, the founder of Dr. Lal, Sangeeta Reddy, promoter of Apollo, and Velu, the promoter of Trivitron. Thank you all for being on the panel. Greatly appreciate it. On how do we think about, a lot has been said about access, quality, and cost. What is your prescription for all three of them?
Sangeeta is offering to solve this one, so I can take the next. I think we've talked a lot about what I call the ability framework: reliability, accessibility, and affordability. Whereas I think all of us have ideas in terms of what to do, and probably all doing it on our respective spaces. I'll probably put it in three buckets. I think it might make it easier and probably simpler. We are aware, and you've kind of very articulately described what the situation in the country is, so there's no point talking about that. So I would bucket it in first, if we can look at ways of reducing the burden of disease in itself. You talked about shifting from curative to preventive, hygiene, and issues around that. So all of that, pretty much to my mind, comes in that bucket. The second is we have shortfall of total infrastructure in the country. You detailed that in your short presentation. And therefore the logical comment would be to add infrastructure. But I think we have to focus also on improving the efficiency of our infrastructure. So first is reduce burden. Second would be improving productivity of what we have, because we can add more. If you're currently using it, theoretical number, say 40%, if you add more, that'll come at 40%, no point. I think that's a waste of money. But we can, with certainly the technology and the kind of competence that we have available, we can simply just get the government and the states to uplink their outcome data, not clinical outcome, which might be a Herculean task for the government to do, but just productivity outcome data. How many beds are utilized across the network? How many prescription infrastructure? We can add hard infrastructure, which we must any which way. But can we use technology to get, connect up a lot of it that Phyllis talked about in terms of using video conferences or Skypes or phone-based and so on and so forth. We go to Singapore pretty extensively, and I understand that model a little bit. I think we need to stage out who gets taken care of by the government and who needs to take care of themselves, probably different proportions. So maybe the 80-20 this one and 20-80 that way. But we need to get to a point where there is a payer, if not from the perspective that people can afford it, but even time of event may not be affordable. There will be enough people in upper middle class who can afford.
I get to be the school teacher. So, but first of all, Karan, and I think it's a tremendous report and a lot of insights. The shifts are really, across a multitude of areas. The biggest one, I believe, is what Phyllis pointed out, which is consumerism. The customer is seeing us in a very different way than I think traditionally we saw ourselves. The customer knows how to seamlessly access between public and private healthcare. They are going into the government health system, they're using the RSPY, they're coming into the private provider when they need, they're accessing medicines at the free dispensary. And so I think this consumerism and the beginnings of a seamless boundary between public and private are one of the big shifts. The ability of technology and the fact that it's moved from some esoteric high-end thing that large corporates have to accessible in everyone's hand, largely driven, I believe, by the entire mobility space. 450 million people who now have access is a big one. I also believe one of the big shifts is that a lot more people have the answers. We used to be a pretty rare kind of small group sitting in these healthcare forums, and it's fabulous to see the energy, momentum, number of players, the additional smaller players, and the new models. And that, I think, is that healthcare moving not yet center stage, but almost center stage, has been one of the big and extremely positive shifts that is happening. So broadly, if I look at the fact that there are more players, there's technology and enablement, there's consumerism, these are the three big ones. I'm not going to talk about what we shouldn't be doing, but I do want to talk about what I think we should be doing in a slightly different way, in a more additive way. And the first one I'll put under a thing of, I think we must recreate a framework which enables what every physician in this room and every healthcare provider who loves healthcare wants to do, which is enable the practice of good medicine. And good medicine is about the ability to treat everyone who comes through your door. Good medicine is about a quality framework which enables. So if we have an antibiotic policy so that the frontline general practitioner is using third generation antibiotics, and by the time a patient comes into our doors, he's developed antibiotic immunity, that's not good medicine. We need large frameworks. If we have people who come into our emergency room and we know they're not going to be able to afford the surgery, we have to find a way to treat them. That's healthcare is shifting from the hospital to the clinic into the home, and therefore enable this continuum of care by the financial model, which is consumerism. The customer is seeing us in a very different way than I think traditionally we saw ourselves. The customer knows how to seamlessly access between public and private healthcare. They are going into the government health system, they're using the RSBY, they're coming into the private provider when they need, they're accessing medicines at the free dispensary. And so I think this consumerism and the beginnings of a seamless boundary between public and private are one of the big shifts. The ability of technology and the fact that it's moved from some esoteric high-end thing that large corporates have to accessible and in everyone's hand, largely driven, I believe, by the entire mobility space. 450 million people who now have access is a big one. I also believe one of the big shifts is that a lot more people have the answers. We used to be a pretty rare kind of small group sitting in these healthcare forums, and it's fabulous to see the energy, momentum, number of players, the additional smaller players, and the new models. And that, I think, is that healthcare moving not yet center stage, but almost center stage, has been one of the big and extremely positive shifts that is happening. So enhanced insurance coverage. But again, what we should not do is do pure insurance the way it's being done. Let's learn from the lessons of US and Singapore and every other smart country in the world. Include prevention, reward quality and outcomes, not just activity but quality, not just quantity like Shivendra said, but reward the positive things. So a new enablement is something we should do. Pursuing the old straight insurance, plain vanilla method is something we should not do. Bring outpatient within the gambit, within the ambit of insurance so that the coverage is wider, and acknowledge the fact that healthcare is shifting from the hospital to the clinic into the home, and therefore enable this continuum of care by the financial models is another big one. I was particularly moved by your entire piece on Leave No Child Behind. And if there's something we should not do, that is that we should not ignore the reality of the multiple Indias that exist within India. And we have to find ways in all our policy, with our voice, with our frameworks, to find different mechanisms to cover everybody. So ignoring any one segment of the population and the lack of pursuit of equity in the system is something which is will not in the long run leave us with a good kind of platform that we feel good about.
Sangeeta, excellent points, and I think you've covered a whole huge amount of ground here. So Velu, you might want to comment on any thoughts in response to Sangeeta, and then how do you make this a lot more sustainable going forward, the health system?
So when we come to India, I think maybe the first thing we have to do is read your 100-page report. So probably it covers most of it. But what really we see in India is we have vision and we reasonably do some kind of planning, but the implementation fails in many times. And we also don't do constant monitoring, control and correction. So there has to be some mechanism in which all the three stakeholders, which is if you see there is some report which says 1/3 of the healthcare is provided by the public sector, 1/3 is provided by NGO sector and another 1/3 by the private sector. So if all three stakeholders have to come together and see, because all three has a relevance in my opinion. I think over the past 20 years this ecosystem has evolved. In all these three people are coexisting. But as Sangeeta was saying, there is no even sharing of information. So if there is some electronic medical records kind of information today, whether within India or outside the world, people want to look for data from Indian healthcare. We don't have very credible data. Sometimes that's one thing which we need to see, how can we all share together and create a data and start not just talking with vision and planning, who want to monitor, control and quickly correct what we need to do. And in India's sustainable efforts, I think one of the issues which all of us talked about is, of course, access is important, quality is important, but also cost is extremely important. So when it comes to Make in India, we need to do, but just it cannot be in only putting our logo and saying we want to make in India. We need to create a kind of ecosystem in which we can create the right atmosphere for not only domestic companies but also the international companies to come here, set up infrastructure, particularly in the technology space, to do Make in India. We have to look at the other countries like Mexico, China, Turkey, all of them, where the buy local countries, say for example Make in India has to go with Buy India and also Make for the World. So all these three has to coexist in some form or other. And again, women and child health is an area I think everybody talked about, is another area I think if we have to put lots of focus, if we have to really create a sustainable model. Like vaccination, you did talk about it, we have a very poor track record of vaccination. Newborn screening is another area where every other country has gone into universal newborn screening. We don't even test our babies for basic things like congenital hypothyroidism, where we have a big incident happening here. So the prevention diagnosis, every one of us talked. So I think we do have the right framework and the right thought process. If you only create a kind of proper implementation mechanism in which just not the government alone is not the only one who's looking at implementation and monitoring. The private and NGOs, the other providers are also part of it, and we all sit together in one room and talk about a longer term vision for the next 5 to 10 years. I think we will have I think that forums like Nat Health is a great initiative to bring all the people together in one forum. And we also have to bring the government more and more into this so that they start understanding and private public partnership. I think Dr. Reddy was saying we need to add the people to it. So we need even the people, the trust deficit which is happening. General feeling about general public today is the private healthcare providers are out here to just take them for right. For everything there is a question. So people should know what is credible, what is not credible. So I think forums like this has to make awareness to the patients a lot more. So that I think the general awareness about what is right and wrong, the patient empowerment. The empowerment shouldn't become like every hospital having hundreds of consumer cases.
When it comes to institutionalizing what we've talked about today.
Yeah, the first thing which I would like to emphasize here is that unless we connect now digitally all the dots in India, well, we are not going to be achieving much of the universal health care or Arogya. And it has been said repeatedly, and last time when NASCOM and Nat Health were with the Ministry of Health, and the Health Ministry had said that now they are ready with an electronic health record system. So we have only heard about it, and the sooner these things are implemented, well, we'll get off the ground, because without this we just can't move ahead. The second thing which comes to my mind also is that the government of India should have now, they should have better mechanisms in dealing with people like us. Just to give you an example, now when it comes to implementing a healthcare program, Well, we are not going to be reinventing the wheel. Well, you have written a very nice report, but most of it is very well known to the government of India already. And you can't, go to them and say that we have found something new. So the point I'm trying to make is that, well, it is high time that now with the new Modi government, well ensconced, etc., there should be a mechanism from the government of India. They should come forward first, and it is time that we created somebody, who could be a link between us, the private industry, and the government of India. And many times I've said that in front of Mr. Love Verma also in the last conference at the CII. What I would like to say is that there are people, whom we can go to, and maybe the government of India also should, realize this, that the private sector just cannot enter their, silos and create something and say that, okay, it's done. So I would like to, I see in front of me Dr. Meenakshi Datta Ghosh, who's sitting here, who's former Secretary Government of India, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Somebody like her who can take, on a regular basis, this dialogue is started between the government and us, so that we can get somewhere. So that's one. Second thing is that I come from a diagnostics industry in which, the 3 or 4 major players like SRL, Metropolis, ourselves, Thyrocare, etc., have been able to reach a fair amount of people, inside India. The accessibility has been improved, and thanks to not only us, logistic services, etc., etc. So there are, nearly 500 now accredited labs all over India. So if the government of India is serious, well, it can tell us that, okay, this is the area which belongs to you, and we would like these tests to be done, etc. And we can get off square one, instead of thinking every time that, no, should we go and we will create, a van in which a man will be sitting and we'll put an instrument inside, and it will go inside the interiors of India. So that is, again, it's not a very practical solution. I think we can tell you that the stability of the sample is going to be intact. We can ferry it 50 kilometers or 100 or thousands of kilometers and give you a very, good report.
Great. Thanks for having me here. This panel of eminent entrepreneurs I don't quite belong here, but I'll take it. And also great job on the white paper itself. I think it lays out very starkly the crossroads that India is facing right now, and provides, I think, good input in terms of decision making. So to answer your question about public health, if you go back basically to first principles, what should government do in health? There's an area of health that is uncontroversial, that nobody, left or right, disagrees about, and that's public health. And it's the part of health that is truly about public goods, for which there is no market. The purest form of it is there is no market for it. And therefore you have to get it done. Like, if you think about something as simple as promoting breastfeeding, that's something which has no market behind it. It's a huge public health impact, and nobody else can do it but the government. So those elements of pure public health are what government is well poised to do and should do well. If you can move a little bit further from pure public health, you also have a bunch of things that are good for externalities, where the government as well has a tremendous advantage. If you think about vaccination, for example, which we're passionate about, that is a private good in some respect, because I benefit from being vaccinated, but also create herd immunity, which makes other people vaccinated. There's a social aspect to it that makes government quite meaningful and important to get those pieces done. And there's other elements of public health that I think government needs to get quite right, and this includes things like surveillance, disease surveillance, and information. If you think about Ebola recently, that's a failure of surveillance, a failure of being able to tackle it, and you can see when a public health system doesn't function, the consequences of that are quite bad. Similarly, in terms of information, should India focus on NCDs, should it focus on injuries? The fact that we have surveys done every 10 years. I mean, the last survey we can point to in health that's representative is NFHS 3, which is 2005-6, and we're 2015 right now. So we have 10 years gap in terms of information thing. There's a whole bunch of things that I think we need to get right from the point of view of government's role in public health. Moving beyond that, there's other areas which get a bit grayer, which is, what is the role of government on equity? Everybody understands that health is not just any other market, that you don't accept that if somebody's rich, you can get their Mercedes, and if somebody's poor, they'll get a bike. You accept that, but you don't accept it in health. You accept there's some minimum element of health that everybody should be able to access. And this is the area where I think government has a role to play as well, and defining what those elements are, where the poor people are especially affected. And if you look at our states which we work in, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, communicable diseases, MNCH type of things are still a dominant piece of the puzzle, so we need to tackle those elements as well. And there's a third element of what government tends to be good at or do is to look at market failures in the insurance market. And again, the health insurance market is not a usual market. The provider asymmetry creates enormous amount of problem for functioning of a health insurance market. So there is an element of government's role there. So I would say, to kind of answer the first part of your question, I think the prevention, promotion, vaccine preventable diseases, get rid of polio, make sure that we roll out the 4 vaccines that have been launched last year, include a 5th vaccine, which would be the pneumonia vaccine, which would be the huge dent and pneumonia, a big killer of children, would be one of the few things I would say we do.
Thank you for inviting a rank outsider to your panel. I'm at best a user of healthcare, and right now not a very frequent one, I would think. My first statement since morning I've been hearing, we want to create an Arogya Bharat. So my first statement is we can't create an Arogya Bharat without a Yogya Bharatiya, which means we can't create a healthy India without a skilled India, right? And that, by the way, is the same dream that we had in information technology 33 years ago when NASSCOM was formed, when many IT companies came up. The second thing is whenever it comes to skilling, we always look elsewhere. And most probably we'll be looking at government, and because we all pay taxes and we believe that government should play a role in making, providing skilled people, and that should be the responsibility of the government. I think one lesson from the IT sector is that government can play a very small facilitating role and nothing more. And I think the rest has to come from within this hall. The third area, which I would like to say, is that as employers, we have a huge responsibility to make sure that we get the skilled people, because behind those skilled people lies our productivity. And I was just commenting on the fact that we all lament, and by the way, in technology, education, every sector, we lament about the fact that we spend very little. But I think we should also think of, besides spending very little, we get very much more little from that spending very little. So there is the whole issue of efficiency that seems to get forgotten about, the fact that we have less money. Now, how did we address all these things in information technology? And that's what I would like to maybe present some thoughts here. The first, as employers, you have to believe that you are here to promote talent, not poach talent. Now, this may be a slightly difficult one to swallow, but I think promoting talent, and that's what we did actually. The early 20 companies in information technology reached an informal pact amongst themselves that we'll get more people from outside to come and join our sector than to poach from each other, because poaching from each other is the simplest task. And by the way, you are making yourself more and more uncompetitive by every single move.
So, I think firstly, I think Mr. Thadani's comments probably require a panel discussion of itself. They're very insightful and coming from a completely outside-in perspective, so I think there are lots of take-homes there. Karan, I don't think the question really should be whether prevention is good economics. Because I think good economics is a function of what the market wants and what you provide. I don't think anybody would have imagined 30 years ago about having billion-dollar industries on providing water. It was at least assumed to be something that you should be able to get for free. I don't think people would have imagined that a cup of tea that probably costs a couple of rupees at the roadside, or if you were to do the economics of the cost of your tea at home, can cost $500 sitting in the building that you're sitting in. So I don't think the issue is with economics. The issue is what does the consumer want and how organizations come around to deliver that.
So as far as the awareness of prevention is concerned, well, this has to be a sustained effort both from the private industry and the government. It's in the sense that the way the government went about, talking about eradication of polio and smallpox earlier, etc., etc. And the private sector can join in really well here. And it has to be brought home through various fora, whether it's the schools, the corporate sector, or whatever, that it is better to get yourself, seen by a doctor or get tested in wellness rather than illness. So you have to inculcate this habit of getting yourself go to some place, and when there is really nothing really wrong with you. And that is where the fatalistic attitude of the Indians as a community, as our DNA comes up, that whatever has to happen will happen one day. So this truth has to be brought home more to the ground level so that people can understand that. I don't know how the Americans did it, but in India there is still this barrier which we are facing, that well, everything is fine with me. So the prevention has to be brought in slowly. I really don't have all the answers, but a good starting point would be a mass campaign, the way the government started, the smallpox and the polio.
I'm grappling with where to begin because a lot of things have been said. But on preventive healthcare, I think nothing we say can be too much. However, the realities are that we cannot do this broad, widespread stroke. Like the earlier policy did say, we will do blood sugar, blood pressure screening and cholesterol screening for the whole population, etc. We need to put prevention, diagnostics, behavior modification, continuum of care into the entire framework of the plan. None of them stand separately. And so whether you're talking yoga, holistic, whatever it is, so ultimately it's a shift from pay for performance, pay for service, to really pay for outcomes. And if the outcome we're seeking is a healthier community, then the behavior and the interventions will follow. So it's like measure what you treasure. That's health is important, start measuring it, so do all the tests. And then reward what has been well done. So if you're keeping a population healthy, reward that rather than sickness. So these are the two simple broad guidelines which then will move backward into all the behavior modification that's required. And then besides the circle of influence, I think in health, I would say that, Mr. Thadani, we need to expand our circle of influence because health really influences all. And whether it's the pollution or the food we eat, everybody quoted Singapore. Do you know that the food bandi, the street food in Singapore, do not use refined flour? It's banned to use refined flour, they only use whole wheat flour. So it's policy like that which can make radical change, which I really think is really huge. And then, I don't know if I'll get this a question again, so I want to share a quick, little bit of a thought process. Many providers in the room will be sitting here and wondering, why in the world can't we do it? We've done, I would say 120,000 heart surgeries, great results, we can do it at $2,000, $3,000. Why can't we heal India? And what is the problem? Why is this so? I think speed, scale, collaboration, cooperation is one big one. But the untapped or the unmentioned elephant in the room.
I'd like to add that, recently the health minister has come out with a statement. He was asked that why has the health budget been slashed from 36,000 crores to 30,000 crores? And he said that because of non-utilization. Now, non-utilization of funds, and from the private industry, we are always short of funds. So again, this is another possible area where the private industry can sit with the government and help them how to utilize funds. That's one part.
And we know that well.
And I think we have we know that slightly well. Okay. And the second part is that the government has been talking about about spending your 2% of what we call PAT, EBITDA, 2% EBITDA, that is profit before tax, on corporate social responsibility. Now, to my mind, there couldn't be a bigger social responsibility than the health of the people. And I would like the government to, specifically, put it down that the health, for example, if I can, I'm supposed to invest that money in healthcare, I don't know about it. Can I go? I'm good at testing, so that 2% should be utilized, from my point of view, in testing crores of people and many more. It's silly for somebody to expect that Dr. Lal is going to go and set up, a toilet here for somebody here and there. So it doesn't make sense. So that has to be rationalized.
Yeah, I think after a long time, so now all the secretaries are talking about medical devices. Till now we have been clubbed under pharmaceuticals. So it's a big movement from understanding we are a separate industry. So it took 10 years. So after 10 years, we don't have to be called as, Department of Fertilizers doesn't, manage medical devices. So now the Department of Pharmaceuticals have said it will be called Department of Pharmaceuticals and Medical Devices. So I think it's a good, at least, start for 6 months at a government which is just 6-7 months old. It's a good start. And we think we have a great model in front of us with China. My thinking is, we should take, I think Terry is here, Krishna is there, they have a lot of money and budgets. We can, probably we can put 1% of that from Trivutran side, and we can take 100 government officials to China. Because I lived in 1991 to 93 in China. What I saw there is something is really phenomenal. Those days there was no big PowerPoint presentation. The Chinese used to have the long stick. And I used to off the time sleep because I don't understand. When my country manager has to translate to me. So whatever they said, they will do it. Every time they say this is what we will do by 2000, this is what we will do by 2010, this is what we will do by 2020. The Chinese did at least 3-4 years in advance.
So I think that there's an absolute, and we've said this before, I think there is no reason that you can't tap into this underlying capabilities of India's engineering talent, that we are missing out. And if you go to university settings, medical device is just not on their minds. I think that's another piece of this equation, is getting the bright minds of India to pursue a career in the medical technology world is another area that I think we're keenly interested in, those collaborations that we can do with that. India should be a net exporter of medical technology. All said and done, there is no reason why we can't do that. And that's something that, as China developed their system, to the points that you made earlier, in addition to that, they helped create the supply base that was necessary to support the manufacturing. We're the largest medical device manufacturer in this country. We would love to do more, but we are still largely importing components to do the manufacturing of these technologies. And that's something that we've also been speaking with the government. It's helping to incentivize the supply chain base that is necessary to make this a much more expansive capability. But there's nothing intellectually, nor financial, nor capabilities in this country that would prevent us from being a net exporter of medical technologies.
So let's open it up to the audience, and the only thing I ask is this should be tough questions, and please direct it to people on my left and my right. Questions, guys? No.
He's written the 100-page report.
Go ahead, please go ahead.
I'd like to congratulate Nat Health on this occasion of their second annual event. I was here for the first annual event, and I can see that there is indeed, a lot of movement forward. I would like to pin that down particularly to, I think the private sector today has an enormous opportunity, which I do urge that you tap into, which is the national health policy, now the draft policy brought out into the public domain. I want to say that this happens on average once in 15 to 20 years. I did the national population policy in the year 2000, not a comma has been changed since then. you have an opportunity. Also, I thank Ms. Yale and other partners of NATHEalth who brought out this morning.
I am Dr. Shakti Gupta, working in R&D Shubha Marine Sciences. We have done a large number of studies, actually costing also more than 60 studies on different areas. And recently we did one study to find out why people come to AIIMS. What I found that 55 to 60% of the patients, they come for specialty and super specialty treatment. Either they are referred or they come on their own for further treatment. And another study we did recently in inpatient area of AIIMS, where we have got about 2,500 beds in different centers. What we found that the satisfaction level to this is more than 95%. In some centers it is 97%. What I want to say that the thing which is missing as in today is the trust. There is a trust deficit in the peripheral institutions. Because these people, they come from different part of it. We are getting to the almost northern India, including the Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, the northeast, and all those people, and neighboring countries also. And here, actually, if we are able to establish the facilities in the periphery, what we found, the patient keep on waiting. They are ready to spend money, but they want to visit a facility where they have a confidence that they will be taken care, and there will be not be unnecessary extra, say, investigations and investigation lab that burden on them, or maybe unnecessary surgeries. Recently, I was discussing with this actually in one of the meeting also that even if we increase the number of beds from 2,500 at present to 25,000, it is not going to solve the problem in the country.
Focused on how India, in order to improve outcomes, needs to focus on preventive and primary care. I'm looking at an answer to a question as to what is a good spend on that area. And to arrive at that, I would like to understand from this a very rich panel in terms of knowledge. For the throughput which goes through tertiary care in India, what is the per unit spend, per person spend, and how many times it is that for the throughput which goes through primary and secondary care, and how does this ratio compare across the world? So if I have to, should I ask this question again? Should I make it more clear?
Just ask again because Karan's listening. This is Arogya Bharat 2035. So please focus on the...
Okay. See, we know that Arogya Bharat should actually, as the founder, the Fortis chairman said, we should focus on Arogya Bharat to decrease the disease burden. But to get a sense of what needs to be spent on primary and preventive healthcare, I would like to get a sense of what is the per person spend on the throughput which goes through tertiary care. How does this spend compare with the per unit spend for the throughput which goes through primary and secondary care in India? And how does this ratio compare across the world? So I hope it meets the criteria of a tough question.
No, we have the data actually in the white paper. I don't recall it. Shantanu, if you can just help me with which page it is on. We've broken out the tertiary care spend. I believe is about 13 billion out of 35 billion, if I remember correctly, and 35%. Thank you, Shubham. And so I think you should answer. So I think the primary component, we're just digging up what is that exact number, but the question really is how do we reallocate? But then there's this entire population that is really not consuming primary care. So the big question really is how do you get that population to start to consume and primary care early so that you prevent the later use of tertiary care? Shimna, you want to jump in? Some comments? You have some data you want to share?
May I request Dr. Sangeeta Pikhale, President, Association of Medical Consultants and member NATHEalth to kindly grace the dais. Welcome, ma'am. May I request Mr. Sushobhan Das Gupta, Managing Director, India, Johnson & Johnson Medical India, and Vice President, Diabetes Care Asia Pacific, and Senior Vice President, NATHEalth, who's gracing the dais now. May I request Ms. Deena Johar, CEO, Subha Vazbu to kindly join us on stage. Mr. Somesh Chandra, COO and CQO, Max Bupa Health Insurance Company Limited. Mr. Suyash Borar, CEO, the Calcutta Medical Research Institute and Governing Council member, NAT Health. Sir. And of course, Mr. Parijat Ghosh, partner Bain and Company, who's going to be driving the big debate for us. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the esteemed dignitaries with a huge round of applause.
We've really laid out a vision for where India could be in 2025. But all of this has to come together, and we know that there are multiple different elements that need to fall in place for us to lead that, for us to reach there. So it gives me great pleasure to have this esteemed panel with us for discussing that. And I'll start off, Shishobhan, with a question to you. We've certainly made a lot of progress on different dimensions. But when you actually look at the delivery system, and when you think about the current gaps that are there in the delivery system, what would you say are some of the priorities from a delivery perspective that we need to be focusing on as a country?
Thanks, Parijat. I think first you rightly said is that we have indeed made a lot of progress versus what we were around 10 or 5 years back. And first of all, I think we addressed what are the gaps. And if I look at, I would say 3 critical gaps that comes up from a delivery standpoint. One is the infrastructure itself. And when I say infrastructure, it's not only about the number of hospitals which are there, also the spread of hospitals as well as the utilization. So if you look at the primary versus the secondary and the tertiary, how it is spread, and secondly, how it is utilized. That's a big gap, I believe. Secondly is the capacity, and when you look at the capacity, again, it is not only the doctors or the nurses, but the allied health workers and people who are associated with the healthcare ecosystem. And the capacity today to serve the number of people who suffer from the disease states that we are encountering in India is suboptimal. And the third one, which I think is basically quality at an affordable cost. I think these are the 3 big gaps that we need to really look at. And from a priority standpoint, when you look at each one of them, from an infrastructure standpoint, I think the other speakers have talked about it, it has to be given a priority. Healthcare has to come as a priority from an infrastructure standpoint. The funding has to be adequate, and the public-private partnerships that we are so-called talking about has to now see the light of the day. That is not being seen.
I have to thank NATHEALTH, Mr. Anjan Bose, Mr. Sushobhan Dasgupta for having introduced this new group of doctors to this dialogue. If you really see the last 10 to 15 years, people have either talked to the municipal government or the government sector or the corporate sector, and they have not really dialogued with the nursing home sector. It is loosely considered as a unregulated or unstandardized kind of a group, which is a relative untruth, I would like to say here, because we have the same number of regulations that are applicable to the larger sector hospitals. So when you talk of licensures, compliances, all sorts of rules that apply, all the number of rules apply to the smaller sector. Then what is actually happening is the delivery happens through just one individual called the doctor, the owner, the physician. And therefore the owners of the running of the business, whether be it recruitment, training, paying the salaries, doing the compliances, everything falls onto the physician. And therefore he does not have the adequate time or does not make the adequate time in order to report to all the standards that the government sends to the corporate or the larger sector. So I think what is happening is, I had coined a word which I had spoken to you last time. The largest sector of provider is the small and medium healthcare provider. Because today it provides 75% of the healthcare to the country. And I have said that the corporate sector covers a particular group of individuals. The government covers the rest, but a significant is private. So the outpatient volume is about 80% of the country's outpatient. Today is managed by the nursing homes.
How do you see us as a country moving towards predefined standards in terms of quality of care? Is that really something that you see is achievable, or do you see that really as a mirage?
Well, I wish I had an answer in yes or no, but I can actually just share with all of you our journey that
that we have been through all of this while. So being a rural healthcare provider where we really wanted to organize that sector, since people were talking about challenges, the challenges were relatively the same. We didn't have people, the technology wasn't optimally utilized, affordability was an issue, and we tried many, many things. And when you're talking about primary care, we're not creating giant structures in one place, but we're talking about one clinic in one village, and then you have another clinic 50 kilometers away, and it's a large network that you're managing. And when you go down to the level of primary care at the village level, the movement in itself also becomes a challenge. So it is not only about clinical quality that you have to maintain, but also when you're talking about blood movement, how do you ensure that there is a minimum processing time that is maintained, in which time we can actually process it. Our attempt of wanting to maintain some standards has been through the usage of technology that we have. So all of the practitioners that we use, and I know that Ayush was were referred over here to say that they do fill the gap. We train them, and then we have a set of 100 protocols to say, okay, these are the protocols, these are the pharmacological outcomes that you need to stick with. This is what you do for diagnostics, and all of those are actually checked at the back end. So every entry that is made at the front end, there is a clinical audit team that really looks at, did you comply with what you saw? So it is not only about bringing in workforce, training them, and letting them be all by themselves to provide healthcare services.
See, when we started the quality journey, or we applied for NABH and things like that, initially the response was a bit different. Like in East or Bengal, the work ethic is slightly different. Some extra work, and the response is slightly.
I won't take that personally.
But we did it. The team was good. We were lucky that we were first in India. But the mood was not as good as it was when we got the award from the president, or when there was a special thing, price differentiation or price differential. We managed to get from Government of Bengal higher rates than any other hospital because of the quality. That was one of the major sort of booster for the quality sort of journey for the person or the team which was involved. It was virtually unheard of. Getting high price, high rates, that was from government, that was from Bengal. I remember in one of the CI's annual conference, I had announced that, and people did not believe it. Someone got up during question answer and asked me the proof. I had to ring up, get a fax and things like that, and give him the proof as such. What I'm trying to say is, in the quality journey, or to maintain the quality, you've got to have some sort of incentive, some sort of differentiation. In India, we have started this NABH, NABL and things like that, but there should be more universal set of standards which should be properly measured, and the outcome should be there on a regular basis. Based on those parameters, there should be ratings. You have ratings in everything. Maybe in hotel you have ratings when we are here. Even in ACs there are ratings. In the health sector also, in services and in the products, there should be proper ratings. And the minimum standards of ratings should be mandated. You've got to be clear that at least minimum, definitely I will be getting the minimum standards of care. I won't be dying if I go to a place or things like that. And over and above that, the best would be if there's a price differentiation. For different ratings, there should be different price. That will be one of the major booster or differentiator which will ensure that people go for higher quality because they will get higher price. It should be P for P, price for performance. Yeah. That will click and click very well. Thanks.
Excellent. No, is any integration of any ongoing experiments with local government? I mean, the point I made in the morning about pit crews replacing specialists, the whole idea is the following. That when a patient from, a neoliterate patient from rural background comes to a doctor and is prescribed esoteric antibiotics, the patient may beg, borrow, steal and actually purchase those antibiotics and even have them administered.
Between public and private, we do need to see more active partnership between public and private. Today that maybe isn't happening at enough places and certainly not at scale. But that needs to happen. And I think Somesh, the point you were making, that simplicity in partnership, that seems to be the learning that you had from
the insurance example, maybe we need to see how we build such models even on the care provision side.
Thank you. That was truly a compelling session and very, very engaging again. Thank you, esteemed